There it is. Oh, if we were 18 years old and knew how to deal with technology. So we'll be getting going in just a minute or two. Be patient. Be very patient. You ready to go, Jerry?
Sure. Why don't you go ahead and kick it off, Gary, and I'll jump in.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome, everyone. I'll be the moderator. My name is Gary Kokens. I'm a member on advisory board of the Society of Cost Engineers. There, you can see on the screen, you may want to write down that website if you're not already a member. Really good material in the website. Previous webinars have been on a whole host of topics, including should costing, target costing. This one is going to be very relevant. In a minute or two, I'll introduce Nick Leader and Rudiger Stern, who will be doing the presentation. But this is on ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And it's interesting when you think about those three letters. When it comes to the E, quite frankly, in my opinion, it's the most important one, especially younger kids. Environmental. This is about climate change, carbon footprint, reporting, reduction, counting, and the like. The social, that's a little bit tricky. We don't want to get into politics. Governance, though, you know, that's really board of directors and the executive team. They have the responsibilities to make progress with, you know, carbon footprint reduction and all the things that are impacting the environment. So I'm going to let Rudiger and Nick self-introduce themselves, put up their PowerPoints, and let's get going. So Rudiger, can you get your PowerPoints up?
Yes. And please let me know when you see the screen.
There we go.
Should be in full screen mode now.
Perfect. All right. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, both of you, and a little bit about your organization, Kinetico.
Sure. Thank you very much, Gary and Jerry, for giving us the opportunity. Before we start getting into the topic, sustainability meets profitability, a quick introduction. And Nick, why don't you start giving an overview about yourself?
Brilliant. Well, thank you for that quick intro, Rudiger. So I'm Nick Leader. You can guess from the accent, I'm a British guy living in the UK, but actually have worked all over the world. So I've over 20, I think technically I can put 25 years experience. Working in the industrial and management consultancy space, either owning or advising on large-scale transformations in industrial companies. I also work with organizations like the World Economic Forum on their advanced manufacturing supply chain or value chain platform, really helping us work on the agendas that are going through industry right now, ranging from ESG, which Gary and today's topic is going to be around, the future of manufacturing, but also topics like supply chain resilience as well. So really excited to have the opportunity to speak with everybody today.
Thank you very much, Nick. And let me introduce myself. Born and raised in Germany, living in Potsdam near Berlin. Similar to Nick, have worked on a global capacity in various roles, primarily in management consulting with Accenture, similar to Nick. And yeah, Nick and I came across some time ago and have worked in various capacities since then. As part of my roles, I have advised and consulted companies, manufacturing companies in their industrial transformation, engineering transformations, costing and quoting. And I've also spent time with non-profit organizations and academia to educate and transfer knowledge. Have been with the Society of Cost Engineers for some time, and being an engineer by heart and trade, and look forward to share my knowledge along with Nick in this webinar. So after introducing us, I would like to introduce Connectio, relatively new brand and name. However, we are looking back on 20 plus years of experience in production automation, defining, designing, and implementing manufacturing automation solutions in various industries. And from that experience, we do have the team as well as the skills and the experience to help manufacturing companies in their IIoT journey. And whilst implementing manufacturing automation solutions, the data that have been produced generated interest for the customers as well as for Connectio. And there was a pattern that has been identified, and from that, a product or products have been developed, which we are now selling and implementing into the manufacturing industry. We will look into some of these solutions during this webinar and put it into context of sustainability and profitability. What's our value proposition? What are we delivering to our customers? Connectio is a software as a service business. We do have a SaaS solution or SaaS solutions available that can be accessed everywhere. We provide a turnkey solution to the manufacturing industry that consists of sensors, vibration sensors, heat flow sensors. We have our own cellular network and the cloud solution that helps displaying and analyzing the data, and all of that in a role-based and modern architecture as well as user experience. Given our expertise, we support with domain and industry experts, making our customers successful, all of that with a local customer success team to shorten the time to market and the time to value. And where we have gaps, we rely on our network of installation partners in all the regions we are present. These regions are the United States, Great Britain, as well as the German-speaking countries, so the DACH region. And last but not least, this webinar today is part of that, we connect users, we connect domain and industry experts, thought leaders. We allow them to share their best practices. We also collect the voice of the customer to improve our product and services. And with that, we give a platform to knowledge exchange among peers and industry thought leaders. That's what we say about us, and here is what our customers say about us, or what they experience with us. Two core products predict what that is. We will talk about later. We have seen customers reducing their unplanned downtime in manufacturing and asset management by up to 30%. And as Gary in his introduction rightfully said, impact, so the environmental side of the manufacturing operations, we have seen up to 12% reduction in energy consumption. Leading manufacturing companies rely on our services. We cater into the manufacturing operations of companies. We support OEMs in complementing their products by services, and we also work with infrastructure or utility companies to monitor critical equipment for them. Sustainability meets profitability. Gary said it early on, sustainability put in the context of ESG, there is an environmental component to it, monitoring the carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, understand what's the energy consumption and how much energy I put in to produce a part or a product. There is the social component, and Gary, you mentioned the human rights and policies. We extend the social component towards health and safety aspects, making sure we treat our employees or the workers carefully and make sure that the health and safety risk is being addressed properly. So that's where our products play an important role. The governance piece, which includes the reporting and making sure that the stakeholders and the shareholders are informed properly. How is that relevant, and how is sustainability and profitability linked on the path towards ESG compliance and achieving profitability targets? Manufacturing companies see a lot of challenges. First of all, there's unplanned downtime. So machines are not operating to the extent they should. And companies spend time, effort, and money to react to unplanned failures and minor stops. Linked to that, there is an unoptimized maintenance downtime to maintain and repair assets in the manufacturing space. And that causes downtime more often than it might be needed, and insights into the real health of an asset would be helpful. Needless to say, spiraling energy costs, and that coupled with the ESG reduction targets that are at hand, are a challenge to most of the manufacturing companies we have seen and we have worked with. That's the input, so the asset, the health, and the energy, and then there is also a challenge with the output. So am I getting the product's yield and the quality I'm expecting and I have budgeted for in my business? So getting that and understanding that is an important part of manufacturing monitoring. And last but not least, as mentioned earlier, the workers transformation or workforce transformation with asset monitoring, we are making sure that the exposure to hazardous or remote locations is being reduced, is less, and also addressing the challenge by retiring workforce and make sure that know-how which is there has been captured in the system. So where is the link? How does asset monitoring help? And how do companies overcome the challenges we have talked about, and where's the link between sustainability and profitability? So by understanding the health of your asset and reducing the unplanned machine downtime, you can increase the lifespan of your asset. It reduces costs, cost of capital, and it reduces the carbon footprint as you run on the same equipment for longer. And it also reduces waste that has been caused by downtime. Just to give an example, if you're in a bakery, and I'm talking about industrial scale bakeries, if the mixer is down, an entire batch of dough needs to be thrown away. So that is neither environmental friendly nor is it cost effective. When we talk about unoptimized downtime, we have seen a lot of unneeded repairs and overhauls of manufacturing equipment that again causes carbon emissions by technicians going on site, spending time and money on travel. There are parts being replaced that could have lasted longer with an impact on cost as well as environmental. On the energy side, through monitoring, the waste of energy is being reduced. You can only measure, address and reduce what you measure. And the same is true for the yield. Increasing the yield by having visibility on the manufacturing processes is cost effective as well as helping the environment. And with a modern architecture, we had it when we were logging on earlier, Gary, by having modern IT solutions and systems, you attract the younger workforce and make sure you get the talent you need at a time. But where is the link? We do have the products for that. Predict, which we will look into more closely. We have Impact for the energy monitoring, Output, and Resolve to help the workforce. And how do we do that? So on the Predict side, addressing the downtime. Our own research as well as industry analysts indicate that 82% of all the manufacturing companies experience unplanned downtime. That's a significant number, and that leads that half of the audience being asked is missing or failing in delivering to the customer, either product launch or on the supplier base, and 70% don't know what their maintenance schedule should look like. With an average downtime event that lasts 4 hours and costing nearly 2 million, reducing downtime has a significant financial impact, and we talked about the environmental impact already. How is AssetMinder helping with that? So with monitoring manufacturing equipment and infrastructure assets, we uncover the hidden factories. So we look behind the curtain and understand the full picture of downtime and the associated costs. We also help with planning and managing the management, the maintenance and the repair schedules. So being warned if an asset might fail, and avoid issues to unexpected downtime more proactively. From a workforce perspective, and again, with manufacturing sites or infrastructure equipment being in remote locations, the first-time fix rate is important to not overspend, as well as to minimize the carbon emissions on the way of getting there. It's important to understand the root causes in case an asset fails. From an environmental perspective, it's interesting to learn and understand that manufacturing companies contribute 16% to the global GDP. However, they emit 20% of the CO2 emissions and consume 54% of the world's energy. So how do companies reduce their environmental impact and achieve net zero by 2030? Again, by monitoring the energy usage and make sure that all the information is available to support ISO 50001 compliance, which goes hand in hand with ESG. With AssetMinder Impact, we're not only looking at electricity. Everyone talks about electricity, but we look at the broader set of what we call wages. That includes water consumption, that includes compressed air, gas, electricity, of course, and steam as a secondary energy provider. We look across all assets and the entire equipment, totally vendor agnostic. So we don't care about the existing metering in place. We simply connect. And we believe in democratizing information. So we provide energy data to everyone who needs it. If you want to drive a change in behavior and reduce your energy bill, then it is important that everyone knows about the consumption from the top floor to the shop floor, and not only the engineering information of it, but also the financial and carbon impact. So providing the full transparency to the entire organization is key to us. To get customers and manufacturing businesses started, we assess the situation on site surveying the plant. We provide the sensors and monitor all the relevant information. We connect the sensors to our private network and push the data to the cloud solution. And we help with analyzing the data, gathering the information, and then put actions in place, as well as tracking the actions to make sure that the measures that have been taken show the effect, and the continuous improvement process can start from an energy consumption perspective, as well as from an profitability perspective. And the audience may wonder how that is relevant to the Society of Cost Engineers. And as I believe many of you might be involved in the planning and the budgeting and the quoting for new businesses. And by nature, that process is based on assumptions. So the planning and budgeting and quoting for new business starts before job one, and is often is naturally based on assumptions. However, once the business has been granted and production starts, consumption kicks in. And to de-risk the business and make sure that you as a business and as a manufacturer achieve your ESG targets as well as your profitability targets, we see a missing link between the assumptive and the consumptive side of the house. And that's why we believe providing you more insights into the consumption and how to monitor the consumption is an important topic for this audience. Is there anything you want to add to that part, Nick, before you introduce us to how to get to the value and customer examples?
So, I mean, the only thing I would add here, Rudiger, is on the assumptive side of things, a tremendous amount of effort is applied within the organization to gather the information that's needed to make those assumptions. And those assumptions are quite profound. You know, every business needs to report on, for example, their carbon emission, and your scope 1 emissions, which are related to your manufacturing processes, and the materials that you use from your suppliers as well. All that effort needs to be brought better into context, because as you supply to somebody else, that becomes then their scope 3 emissions. So there's a chain of information that needs to be done here. But it's all done on gathering information in disparate places and not actually linked to really what are you doing, how many parts have you used, how much energy have you consumed in making those parts. And as regulatory requirements are increasing in terms of the accuracy of that reporting, there is a fundamental need to move away from assumptive models to actually looking at what's really consumed to produce the things that you are selling. So I think that, to me, is one of the biggest shifts. And the challenge is actually understanding the elements that drive that consumptive model. And actually not really a model, but actually consumptive results in that respect. Really, shall we move on in this? So the problem is, I would say, industry, I think everybody probably has heard of the term Industry 4.0, 4.0. For Germany, you know, it's Industry 4.0. I got my German, I got an English mixed up there, but Industry 4 has been around for over a decade. You know, it was invented in Germany as part of a major, probably Hanover actually, and launched by the German government. But 10 years later, we as businesses are still struggling to get to the value of Industry 4.0. And we're working on a real paradox at the moment because, you know, looking at the McKinsey results on the left-hand side, it's clear that majority of organizations and executives in organizations, particularly if it's McKinsey, you can say it's executives, yeah, are seeing this as critical to keep their operations running and improving the operational efficiency. And many businesses have started on that journey of Industry 4 and started to do and deploy the technologies, but they're caught in what we call the pilot trap. You know, the majority of these technology implementations are failing and really are struggling to get to the value and the true value within the organization. So if we move on, Rudiger, what we've talked about value, speed, and scale here, and really the first part of that journey is getting clear understanding of the why, the financial why between improving these things. You know, an average downtime event we talked about previously can cost up to $2 million, and that does vary, by the way, quite significantly between the industry you're in. But clearly knowing what the implication of the problems you're trying to solve has a massive value in there. And the environmental impact, you know, value is not always measured in pounds, shillings, and pence, as we say in the UK, but can sometimes be measured in the impact an organization has on the environment and also the society around it. So, you know, increasingly, you know, we're not talking about punitive fines here. We're talking about the ethical responsibility of a manufacturer and the value it creates within the society it operates and the environmental impact it has. And finally, you know, workforce in manufacturing, there is a global deficit of people to be able to do these skilled jobs that make things. And you know, getting the talent in, bringing and attracting new young talent that is wanting to be part of what has historically seen as being a dirty industry is critical for organizations to be able to continue to operate in the future and create the value and the return on value to the shareholders. If we continue, you know, 74% we talked about are failing. One of the problems is they're slow projects. They are difficult to release. Whilst they have struggled to actually connect directly to value, they've also often struggled to deliver. You know, often these projects start off designing and building something off a platform, where actually these problems have been solved already by building and by buying commercial products off the shelf. You know, and as Rudiger mentioned at the start of this presentation, that was the genesis behind Connectio. 20 years this organization has been in industry solving industrial problems, and quite frankly, solving the same industrial problem over and over again. So we've made products out of that. So go for products that get you to speed to delivery. And obviously, speed to delivery also means speed to value. Another element, which is a kind of a fake or false assumption when you go to Industry 4 and enabling your organization to address your ESG challenges as well as your profitability and efficiency challenges, is you can't do that with the kit you got at today on the shop floor. And that's completely wrong. That's a false assumption. Many of the technologies, including our own ones at Connectio, are able to be retrofitted to what you have today. You can make your existing products and assets in your factory smart and connected. And that's a major barrier to remove, so there is no major capital investments that are needed. And the final one is this real soft thing. When you move forward and actually accelerate your digital transformation journey, address those profitability questions, address sustainability questions. It's ultimately about people. And you've got to get the hearts and minds of those people on board with the journey and the transformation that you have to go through. People, unlike processes, are not machines, yeah? So you have to win them over. You win them over, people adopt and use it. If people adopt and use it, you get to value. We're going to go back to value over and over again. And then finally, really, if we move to the last slide on these points, scale. Now, I work with the World Economic Forum. World Economic Forum is very famous for something called the Lighthouse, Industry Lighthouse Programs. Lighthouse programs show a great example of a factory that's doing some great things using modern technologies, perhaps significantly reducing its emissions or increasing its operational performance and improving its operating margin. The challenge there is, how do you actually do that, not just in one factory, but across all the facilities that you have? So the trick to do that is to focus on things that are repeatable and sustainable in terms of their value, not just about one-time hits, but in years to come, we'll still implement the value and can be applicable across the board. Don't just think also about the value in terms of the board and the executives in the organization. This stuff has to work from the grassroots up. So when you think about these changes in the organization, start thinking about the shop floor transformation and the changes, and all the way up to the the board level. So energy reduction, and making sure that energy reduction is on the agenda of the executive is very easy. There's a financial consequence of it, but make it felt and impassioned about the operator as well on the machine. So they want to make sure the machine is using at least or the least amount of energy as possible. And at the start of this, I talked about scope 1 and scope 3, about the supply chain as well. And don't just think around some of the things you can do to improve your sustainability credentials and as a consequence some of the profitability in the organization. Think about it across your entire value chain. When you're doing some of these changes, can you also make those changes available to your supply chain, or also promote those on what you're doing to the companies you're supplying to? And some of those then start to have some of those social implications as well, because you're enabling that across the whole organization and into the local society as well. So just some ideas of value, speed, and scale. So let's bring this to life. This is truly an ESG story. So one of Connectio's customers is a reverse manufacturer. Now, what do I mean by reverse manufacturer? Because that's an unusual term. If you think about it, is if a manufacturer makes a car, at the end of the car's life, that car has to be recycled. It's part of the circularity. And that recycling, when you take a finished product and then strip it down into its base components of materials, that fundamentally is reverse manufacturing. And there's huge value in a vehicle as you kind of reverse and recycle what's behind it. So this particular organization, they take close to 150,000 vehicles every year back into their facilities. And from that can produce nearly 500,000 tons of quality steel that can be reused. And that circular economy really kicks into that position. They don't just do that in one place. They do that in 23 facilities across the UK. And, just to put that, we talked about a 4-hour downtime being worth a couple of million. Well, as I said, it varies quite dramatically, but in one of their facilities, an hour's downtime is somewhere between £15,000 to £20,000. So if we look at this, the company really had to address that downtime because it was actually affecting the whole ESG cycle there, because if they can't recycle cars, the supply chain backs up. Now, that's really interesting because when the factory is down, lorry loads of cars get stuck on the road because they can't come into the facility and offload them. So they turn to Connectio and the Asset Minder Predict product to really help them understand across the facility what's working well and what wasn't. Now, as I talked about before, this isn't about putting new equipment in. And what you see on the left-hand side here is actually what we do. There's the little white devices. So these are sensors. And what they're doing is on this in particular, I think this is I think very sure this is a bearing on a motor. It is measuring. That's actually a cyclone fan. I was trying to remember what it was. It's actually written on the picture, but it's measuring the vibrations of what's going on. And I'll show you in a minute the information that you can detect and deduce from just looking at the vibration of it. And we've deployed over 100 of these across the facility, and they are speaking to our connectivity layer, our gateways. And that gateway transmits this to a single platform that talks. Now, that single platform is giving the customer the insight to understand what's going on across the critical assets. So there's 25 critical assets across their factory. And that's helping them understand the health of it and understanding when to take intervention. So that stops two things. It prevents, doesn't eliminate, by the way, and we'll go on to that in a second, but it prevents downtime. But it also means if you start seeing trending patterns going out, you can actually make earlier interventions and perhaps swap a bearing out. Now, what that means is you put a new bearing in, but that old bearing can also be brought out and then again remanufactured. Now, one of the things I did, I used to work for SKF, which is one of the largest bearing manufacturers in the world. A remanufactured bearing uses 90% less energy to produce. So again, when you do that, it's significantly impactful in terms of the environment, as well as stopping you having downtime. So it has a massive profitability implementation. We talked about this earlier, but this stuff, it doesn't take months to implement. Literally 60 days from the point we got an order, we had an operational system. That's pretty unheard of in the world of IoT. And it took us 2 weekends to implement it. The journey, though, we're not going from 0 to 2,000 miles an hour from the beginning. The customer is going through a journey. The first journey point, and we're still kind of moving through that. So they have to get the data. So they're in that awareness phase. What is the healthy assets? What's going on? Can I do something to prevent it? We're transitioning right now into the alerting phase. So now we're aware of what's going on. We're making proactive interventions. We're telling people, hey, this sensor here on the cyclone fan is going out of kilter. And then finally is the prediction. So let's bring this to life here. This is actually what you're looking at is the actual vibrations of one of those little white sensors. And what you see here is it starts off in February, and you can see there's like a pattern going along, and it's sitting behind the yellow and red lines. And the yellow and red lines are the thresholds, the alerting thresholds, which are set by ISO standards, for example. And what you see here on the 23rd of February, there's a massive spike. And then you can see that spiking, increasing over time, and then running at a very high level. So 30 days until the 24th of March, what happened is that cyclone, well, actually, this is the air knife and a bearing and an air knife, started to behave very differently than it did before. Started to go, well, actually go from typically about 2G to now 26G in its acceleration. And then the 24th of February, 24th of March, just stopped dead. What happened is that's a failure. That's a potential failure of the fan. And then for 21 days, that fan wasn't running. You know, let's say they're just waiting for the spare parts to come through. And then the 14th of April, things start up. And as you can see, the vibrations are back to normal again. So what's this telling us? Well, this information can be used by your people to keep things up and running. You have a failure. You could have taken in that 30-day window intervention, or even 9 days in, if it took 21 days to source the part or even recognize something goes wrong. You need a lead time to source new parts potentially. So this is just a real example of how vibration alone can help you improve both the efficiency, because obviously in that time it's running, it's going to be using more energy than it would normally do, and actually predict when something fails and avoid the downtime. Just going, actually, I forgot I had this slide, but this is actually going right down into the details. But the really clever thing that can go on here is we can look at these little patterns. What you can see here is the G, the same as you saw in the previous slide, but analyzed in a different way. So this is a time wave form. And what you see at the bottom is a normal behavior. And you can see there it's normally just running. And there's a very cyclic pitch because obviously things are going round and round and round. But what you can see here and above is the problem we saw. And what you see here is these little spikes of acceleration. And and we can actually read those. Our software can help you understand and read them, and actually it's like a little bit like reading tea leaves in the bottom of a cup. You can actually understand what's potentially going wrong with that bearing. So you're not only knowing something might fail, but why it is failing as well. And that really helps you make smart decisions fast. So what was the benefit? Well, we know that in less than 10 hours of downtime, this software will be paid for, and we are monitoring that right now with the customer. It took us from go live less than 48 hours to support or identify the first opportunity of value creation. Let me bring this back to an ESG context. This wasn't about something failing, but what we did notice is the extractor fans in the building were turning themselves on at 2 o'clock in the morning. But the factory is shut down at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's wasted energy. So it's not just about all that clever stuff about spotting things that might break. It's about using that information to make smart decisions that actually here saves the company money in terms of energy, but also, therefore, if they use less energy, their carbon emission ultimately drops. They are now, from the work we've done, we're in active. We've actually sold the second site now. We're now looking to bring it into the third site. And now they've got the vibration information. The next stage of the journey, which we're looking at us with, is not just looking at the vibration of the machine, but looking at the energy consumption. Because when you start combining the energy consumption with the vibration, then smarter decisions can be made as well. But you really then know how much each of these bits of kit are consuming and start to be able to report accurately. This is back to the consumptive position. Accurately, you say per ton of steel, how much energy did you need to do to produce that per ton of recycled steel? So that kind of ton per SKU carbon emission, or is absolutely critical for that consumptive calculation. So to conclude with, we are really working with companies to help them achieve their sustainability goal. We talked about two things there. We talked about energy. We've talked about vibration, but this is really where sustainability starts to meet profitability. Sustainability until recently was very much a topic you had to have, but nobody knew why other than being told you had to reduce it. Now there is a real financial imperative. So if a company can reduce energy costs between 3 to 12% is what we're seeing here, that is really a bottom line impact that you can have. And given the energy costs have typically, particularly gas and electricity, have increased over the past 2 years by over 300%. And again, that's hitting your margins all the time. A small increase or improvement like 3 to 12% of energy usage has a big implication in terms of the business's profitability. Reducing the downtime, because if you're down, you're not producing things as well. So reducing that unplanned downtime of around about 30% has a massive implication in terms of the ability to produce parts, but also means that you're not having the lights on when nothing's producing. So making sure that every drop of energy that you're using is being using to produce things is being used to produce things productively and accurately. So a typical organization can easily save about 2 million a year through just looking at those elements alone. And that's based on about a $500 million turnover business. So real savings can be had on some very simple and quickly implementable solutions. Rudiger, I think this is towards the end of the presentation. So let's open it up to some questions.
Yep. Thank you, Nick.
Okay, thanks, Rudiger and Nick. Let me chime in here for a second. First, I do a fair number of presentations at accounting conferences. I have a practice of then going to the exit door before they leave, and people greet me and they say, very interesting. And I say to them, interesting or relevant? There's a difference. Relevant means when I go back to the office, I may be able to apply that. And I hope that is applicable to the attendees. I want to make a comment about Rudiger and regulatory agencies. I think we may be underestimating how quickly regulatory agencies are going to start coming up with standards to monitor progress meeting targets. This is going to put some pressure on board of directors and CFOs and the executive team. You know, I don't think they can basically play games. You know, there'll be an increase in standard setting. I know I'm a little bit involved with CO2 reporting and actually accounting how to measure it. So I did have a member of SOCE who had a conflict, but they asked me to ask you two a question. And here's the question: what has been a major lesson learned by your customers that have implemented your AssetMinder software? This is a curveball. I know you're in Germany and UK. Curveballs are American baseball, but this is a curveball. What has been one major lesson learned implementing that your customers have learned implementing your tool?
I'll start and I'll let you add, Nick. Yeah. So one is to the example that Nick has shown, the adoption is an important piece of it. Yeah, making sure the system is not just being implemented, it's been used, and it's been the value it provides is being leveraged by the audience, by the employees. Yeah, so that is definitely a lesson learned. And to your recent point with the regulatory affairs, what customers value using AssetMinder is the amount of information and the historical information they gather and capture by using AssetMinder. Yeah, so when it comes to not only reporting but justifying investments going forward, or justifying extensions, so that's when they rely on the data that's been captured, analyzed, and made available using AssetMinder.
Yeah. I think from my side, being clear on the value from the beginning, I think actually we guide our customers through that. So that's very less of a curveball. I used to work, by the way, at least one week every month in Boston. So I am familiar with a couple of phrases from the other side of the Atlantic. Generally not, by the way, generally using S's rather than Z's to get it spelled correctly. But I think ultimately, it's the power. Rudiger mentioned a phrase, yeah, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. What we do is we start to measure things they've never been able to measure before. And that is a moment of where companies go, aha, the light bulbs come on. You know, you think about a paint shop, and understanding how much energy is being used, not just by the paint shop, but by the oven versus the sprayers versus the conveyor systems. And actually saying that you've got the oven on, the conveyor systems are off, but the sprayers are still, powered up. What's going on? You can't drop the oven all the way down because it costs too much to raise the temperature, but you can reduce the temperature. And that insight that you suddenly get by seeing the data but connecting it to the real world is so critical. And finally, is that piece there. We talked about technology. it's 20%, if less, technology, 80%, if not more, people. And data is nothing without knowledge. I mean, there is a huge explosion around artificial intelligence right now, and it's a buzzword. And I see many of my customers hiring data scientists, but a data scientist in industrial context is useless without the knowledge of the process. So a great example, again, is I was working with a customer this week where we were saying, look, I think you've probably got an issue with your bearing on this particular item. And then they went, two things they said, which always makes me smile. One is, yeah, we could hear it. So they knew about the problem. And that's a learning a lot of our customers have. It's the people around, the maintenance engineers walking around know what goes on. We're just now measuring it to prove it. But secondly, it wasn't the bearing. It was actually the rotating item was out of balance because of some muck that had stuck onto the fan blade. So what we detected as a bearing failure was actually something completely different. And that's not a problem with our software. It's a combination of knowledge and data gives companies the greatest value from these products. Mm-hmm. So I think that is probably, for me, one of the greatest learnings you can have.
We just have 7 minutes, and so be brief on answering this one, and then we'll hand it off to Jerry to do some concluding remarks about the Society of Cost Engineers. But this has to do with, in your presentation, you talked about hearts and minds and the need for soft skills in addition to the hard skills of being, measured scientists, engineers, and so forth. And so the question is, what suggestion do you have how to overcome resistance to change? Because that's part of the soft skills. You said getting the hearts and minds, but some of the hearts and minds, they're not on board. So what is a suggestion to how to get the buy-in from people that are either skeptical or maybe there's politics at play? And you'll need to be brief so that we can end on time. Rudiger?
Oh,
yeah.
I can do
that. So make it relevant to the individual. That is key. Yeah. So I think not everyone, everyone should be concerned about ESG, but not to the same extent. So it needs to be relevant to the individual and help them in their day-to-day job. That is key.
Nick?
I was going to say exactly the same. If you can show how it adds value to their world, people tend to be more receptive. Communicate is probably one of the simplest things you can do. If they're aware of these things, you have time to overcome some of it. And I guess the third one, very quickly, is you can't win everybody. Accept the fact you can't win everybody's minds, but you will ultimately have some people that will act as advocates, and gradually everybody will come over.
Yeah. Very good. My interesting or relevant, I would basically say this presentation was relevant. So Jerry, I hope you're still on. I'm going to toss it back to you, some concluding remarks. And the attendees, I hope you come to our future webinars. Go to the website as well. There's a lot of archived material there and good reading material, blogs. I've authored a few of them. So Jerry, let you, and there's, I think, good. I'm glad you put that up. Email addresses for Rudiger and Nick, if you want to directly communicate with them. So Jerry, concluding remarks.
Sure. Thanks, Gary, for moderating, and thanks you guys for presenting today. Fantastic. As Gary did allude to, that we're going to be doing hopefully a webinar webcast once a month, and the next series is going to be based on all of our sponsors. So each of our sponsors will take a day and explain their software and their solutions and the benefits that each one of them provide. Gary will be moderating those as well. So thanks, Gary, for doing all that. Also want to remind everybody that the Society of Cost Engineers basic membership is free based on all our sponsors contributing to our financial status. We are going to be implementing a premium membership where you get access to a little bit more information, a little bit more benefits. So stay tuned for that. And I guess that's it for me. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for presenting. Go out and enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.